Chapter 23. A Glimpse of Light. In 1968, 5 years later, I was transferred to St. Bernadette Church located in southeast Dearborn. I had written a letter late in 1967 to Cardinal Dearden, stating several reasons why it would be a practical move to place me in residence at St. Bernadette Church. There, I could work full-time with the Latino community and further develop a team of co-workers to handle the fast-growing Hispanic population all over the southwest area of Detroit. The first draft in establishing what we then called a Latin ecclesiastic team was completed on November 22, 1967. 3 other priests and myself were making every effort to coordinate the ministries of priests assigned to Spanish-speaking parishes. Another serious problem facing us was the loss in number of priests that spoke Spanish. There were no replacements. Teamwork was important, and a director was necessary to get the team started. I was officially appointed director by Cardinal Dearden. Upon completion of my 6-month special assignment, I was expected to show some concrete results, namely that the formation of a team of priests could adequately provide for the spiritual welfare of the many thousands of Spanish-speaking brothers and sisters. Before my 6 months were up, I had put together a team of 17 people, 5 priests, 5 Mexican sisters from Talpan, and 7 laypersons. We met 3 times a week, prayed together, and studied together. We established Bible circles in Spanish called Comunidades de Base. We were happy with the results, but we knew something significant was missing. It came to us during prayer one evening. In the Acts of the Apostles in the New Testament, the apostles, realizing their limitations, created the order of deacons to handle the economic and social problems people had to cope with on a daily basis. We wanted to do the same thing, namely, to confine ourselves solely to the spiritual well-being of our people. We would have to let go of the other aspects of ministry by placing lay people in charge. Laity would be serving laity, and with a much wider range of resources and skills. We had a lot to learn. We wrote to 29 Spanish-speaking organizations in Detroit. We requested 2 delegates from each organization to attend a meeting. The letter stated our purpose. We prepared a hall with seating for 58 delegates and waited. The meeting was a complete failure. No one showed up. We prayed over it and came up with a new plan. Each of us on the ecclesial team took the names of a few organizations. We gave up on letters. We now insisted on personal contact in every case. This time nearly every delegate showed up. I conducted the meeting explaining our intentions and their role as participants. I discussed the role of each officer and then took nominations. Gus Gainet was selected as director and Joe Lopez as assistant director. Other officers were also chosen. Then we wanted to come up with a name for our organization. I broke them up into 5 groups. We preferred a name that was also an acronym. After considering many possible names, LACED was accepted by everyone. LACED means thirst, implying also the hunger of the Hispanic people. The letters LASED also carried the meaning Latin Americans for Social and Economic Development. LACED was born. I inducted the officers. We congratulated them, and then the ecclesial team, including myself, left our positions at the head table and turned LACED over to the officers. Gus Gainet, Joe Lopez, and I appeared before the committee representing the Archdiocesan Development Fund. We applied for starter money to purchase a building and open an office for LACED. They gave us $40,000. LACED began slowly, then turned into a very large and successful organization. We planted the roots of a truly blessed organization that to this day continues to assist Hispanics in every way. They help get them jobs, lodging, a driver's license, education, classes in English, programs for the elderly, for youth, plan activities, and a host of other helpful services. Early in 1969, immediately following my 6-month assignment, I was appointed pastor of St. Bernadette Parish. Being only 12 years ordained, I was, therefore, the youngest pastor in the archdiocese at the time. The cardinal also placed me in charge of another parish nearby, called Our Lady of Mount Carmel. It was a little Italian church with an elderly priest whose health was extremely poor, so I was responsible for the operation of both churches. There were 2 separate parish councils with the appropriate commissions and committees and finance reports. The entire administrative operation was doubled. That wasn't so bad, but when I had a Mass every Sunday in St. Bernadette Church at 9:30 a.m., followed by a Mass in Italian at Mount Carmel at 11, and then returned to St. Bernadette for a 12:30 Mass in Spanish, it was somewhat cumbersome and sometimes confusing. I occasionally would be talking Italian to the congregation at the Spanish Mass. The Mexican people just stared at me with no emotion, not hinting in the slightest that I was in the wrong ballpark. Then I would catch myself and switch back to Spanish. If by chance I would somehow slip into Spanish or even say one word in Spanish at the Italian Mass, hands would be flying all over the place. They would all be yelling very loudly, "Parla Italiano! Italiano!" That caught my attention very quickly. I saw clearly demonstrated before me the old saying about Italian people talking with their hands, and they were not shy. Since my Italian was not nearly as good as my Spanish, I began to write my homilies out in Italian so that I would never slip into Spanish again. I was pretty busy at this time. I continued as director of the Equipo Pastoral, or pastoral team, as we then called ourselves. St. Bernadette Church remained as headquarters since I was now its pastor, but the focus of activity to the general Hispanic community became the former bank we purchased at the center for Lisette. Following a Detroit synod, the Archdiocese of Detroit was divided into 25 segments, which were called vicariates. Each vicariate consisted of between 10 and 15 parishes. Each vicariate had the responsibility to choose their own vicar, who would conduct their meetings and be a liaison to the cardinal's office. St. Bernadette was situated in the Southwest Vicariate, also consisted of about 12 parishes. There was a lot of lobbying going on to put the best man in the position of vicar. It was politics and very similar to the action behind the scenes when campaigning for candidates vying for a public office. The Vatican Council ended in the middle 60s. From then on, the Church moved forward almost in giant steps compared to the pre-Vatican adherence to ancient traditions. The Council sent out messages very clearly that it strongly recommended, and in some cases mandated, that laypersons become more involved in the inner life of the Church. Also, that bishops should work more closely with their priests. One way of accomplishing that goal was to establish a system in which the bishop would be current in his contact with priests and the faithful in general. Thus, the vicariate system came into being. Each parish in the vicariate was invited to send delegates to the general vicariate meeting. The Church was coming alive with new ideas as a result of Pope John XXIII's openness to change and the progressive recommendations of the Vatican Council approving this kind of participation. Surprisingly, every parish in our area sent delegates. They were there to vote. Each parish had a maximum of 4 votes. By the end of the meeting, there were 2 priests that survived the many names submitted: Father Stan Barucki and myself. He was a fine priest, a little older than I was at the time, and very popular, not just among the Polish community. The delegates decided to have the final vote the next time they got together, and at the same time began their first official vicariate meeting. A month later, during the night before the election of the new vicar, I was awakened during the night by a loud thumping sound coming from some empty gift boxes I had left in the corner of the room. It wouldn't stop, so I got up and went over to the corner and opened each box. There was nothing that could cause the noise. I put the boxes back as they were and went back to bed. I said with a deep faith, "If there is anything evil in this room, in the name of Christ, be gone." The noise continued. I presumed it was all right to go back to sleep. It wasn't easy with the continual thumping on one of the boxes. But I was tired and I did get back to sleep. No sooner was I unconscious when in the very lucid and vivid dream I saw my mother coming toward me in a quick step. I ran toward her, and when we met, I hugged her and lifted her off the ground. I was so delighted to see her. I was aware that she had died 15 years before this, and I said to her, "Did I die?" She said, "No, my son, I just wanted to be the first to congratulate you." I said, "For what?" "For being elected vicar of the Southwest Vicariate," she replied. "The voting is not until tomorrow night, and everyone believes it will be close," I told her. "That is true," she said, "but I want to congratulate my son who will be elected vicar." I decided to ask her about the noise. "Did you make that thumping by my boxes?" She smiled. "Of course." "Why?" I came right back. "Just to get your attention," was her answer. "I must leave you now, my dear, but I am never far away." She hugged me one last time and was gone. My eyes popped open, and I did not have the feeling that I was dreaming. It seemed more real than when I was awake. Of course, I did win by a very narrow margin. Over 100 delegates were there. As the votes were being tallied, Father Stan and I switched back and forth as the leading candidate. It was ever so close. When it was all over and I had barely won, I expressed gratitude to those present, and I could not help thinking of my mother's visitation the night before and her confidence in knowing the outcome. At that first meeting, we voted in the other officers. Then we came to an impasse. No one would run for the position of religious education for the whole vicariate. Everyone claimed they were too busy. To resolve the issue, 3 of us volunteered for the job, namely the 2 nuns, Sister Kathy Petrie and Sister Ann Dern, along with myself. These 2 sisters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary community were already on my staff, so the 3 of us simply expanded our program to keep the entire vicariate informed. We also established a center in the school building of St. Bernadette. Parishes in the vicariate had easy access to the center, which was filled with the most current books, articles, and slide presentations ready to be borrowed and used as teaching aids in religious education. We worked hard at it and earned the respect of the parishes we served. Lastly, I was still getting my master's degree at the University of Detroit. I entered the program in 1968 and received my degree in 1971. The degree was called Religious Studies, which in reality was Biblical Theology. It qualified me, if I so wished, for becoming a teacher or a director of religious education as a full-time job. I really did not need another job. Being pastor of 2 separate parishes, carrying the responsibility of a vicar, continuing as director of the pastoral team for the Spanish-speaking, and writing term papers for every class at the university, not to mention the thesis I had to write, were enough to be called full-time. So what did I do? As usual, I added more work by taking on the job of co-director of religious education for the whole vicariate. I was living on a racetrack, rushing from one place to another, from one meeting to another, and there was no let-up. Thank you for listening. And please join us every Sunday at 3 o'clock for our watch party as we premiere the next chapters of Father J's book.